Let the Right One In, by Swedish director Thomas Alfredson, is a slow-paced, dramatic horror film. It focuses on a lonely and frequently bullied 12-year-old boy called Oscar, and the relationship he starts to build with a vampire. The pool scene is a climactic and highly subtextual part of the film. This is a real-time sequence, and the narrative needs time to build tension. Camera movements are slow, keeping the pace of the scene measured. This tracking shot showing the characters moving, slowing down enough for you to see the knife, and then continuing to pick up the pace of the characters is particularly effective. Cuts are often built around character dialogue or action, though there are many shots which linger for several seconds and really let the audience take their time being in the world of that shot. Any shot of Oscar underwater is a really good example of this. The mise-en-scene of this location has also been particularly considered. The dark and gloomy palette both contradict the rest of the film and really represent the events to come in this particular scene. Dark and gloomy. The soundscape is another integral part of building the tension in this scene. This film is often very quiet, so the use of a soundtrack is unusual, but by placing a boombox in the scene and making it a diegetic part of the sound, it doesn't seem out of place in the context of the film. The use of sound is really just a precursor to the silence that hangs in the most tense parts of this scene, really making the audience feel what they need to feel. So by making the sound diegetic, the removal of it is jarring, but also still fits in with the context of the film. Now we hang in that silence, really letting us feel what Oscar's feeling. These shots between Oscar and the bully are cleverly framed to make sure that Oscar is low and the bully is high, really illustrating their power dynamic. Power dynamics are a really important part of the subtext of this film. So by highlighting power dynamics through cinematography, we really get to empathize with the character on the lower end of the spectrum. A big part of the subtext of this film is that Oscar constantly feels unprotected. He's a boy who doesn't really stick up for himself. So by illustrating that through camera movements and shots, we really get to feel what he's feeling. This scene also highlights the power dynamic between the bully and his lackeys as they start to look more and more uncomfortable with the events. As this is the climax of the scene, we know something is about to go down. So by showing them feel what the audience is feeling, we really get to start to empathize with them as well. It opens up the world of this film for us as an audience member, and we really start to get the gravity of this situation. This underwater sequence is one of the highlights of the film. It really illustrates what the film is trying to do. By keeping the violence that we know is occurring off screen, it really lets us focus on Oscar and what his role is in this situation. Because power dynamics are such an illustrated part of this film, we're now shown that power dynamic flip from the bullies being in control to somebody else being in control. But that also really makes us think about where Oscar fits into this. The power dynamic between him and Ellie, the vampire, is also very, very toxic, but maybe in a different way. We start to see that now as Oscar is removed from the water, and he opens his eyes in the midst of this violence, sees Ellie covered in blood, and then he smiles. The audience is then left lingering in the aftermath of this scene, with the knowledge that Oscar has essentially submitted to the idea that Ellie is capable of this level of violence, a huge illustration of the power dynamic between them, and a broader illustration of the power dynamics that this film is talking about generally.